money to actually fix the problems and to make homes safe than the insulation program itself. Look at the schools program, where it was supposed to cost $1 billion to give students in certain years computers. It's now blown out to $2 billion, and only 20% have computers. Look at schools across the country that are pleading with Julia Gillard, please don't knock down our existing buildings just to rebuild them in your image. Let us use the money for something else. You guys can't be trusted with managing billion-dollar programs. So if you're telling me that we're supposed to sit back, lame, mute and not ask questions, well, it's not on, Jason. We want to fix problems in Australia and we want to help you, but you can't expect us to give you carte blanche.
So you sound like Tony Abbott from 2 weeks ago, not Tony Abbott yesterday.
No.
And look,
Jason,
look, hang on a sec, you had a good crack. If you were serious about health reform, don't you think Tony Abbott would have asked for a briefing from the minister yet? We've got Liberal premiers around the state. The Liberal Premier for WA has asked for a briefing and the details on this. We've offered a briefing on the health reforms to Tony Abbott and he hasn't accepted it. So I hope he's serious. This is important and people want us to work together. But Tony Abbott hasn't even asked for a briefing on this yet.
Jason, you're unbelievable, mate. People are asking the Prime Minister details of his plan. Labor premiers are asking a Labor Prime Minister for details of his plan. Don't blame Tony Abbott for Kevin Rudd not coming up with details of his plan.
OK, well, Tony Abbott also provided, gave a speech yesterday, Sophie, on the economy. This is where this olive branch was, of course, offered. But there wasn't any new policy in that. Do you think that he needs to step up the detail himself? We're only, what, 5-6 months away from the election, according to most people's expectations. Is it time now to step up his own contribution?
Well, what is important is for people to know where the coalition stands. And it was a very important keynote speech on the economic principles and the things that we believe in. And just as with oppositions and governments of past and present, details of our policies will be released gradually closer to the election. We need to see what the actual economic position is.
But do you think
out of the budget.
Yesterday he's now being positive on the health. The poll yesterday, as we've discussed at length, seems to have seen Tony Abbott's rise stemmed. And now, do you think that he needs to be more positive in his political approach?
Oh, look, polls come and go. Sure, they're an indication, but you take them with a grain of salt. I have absolute faith in Tony Abbott's leadership, not only to provide a vision for Australia, but substance. He is a leader of substance. He is an independent thinker. He doesn't need focus groups to tell him what to say when he goes out every morning to speak to the media, unlike Kevin Rudd. And when you see policies coming out of the coalition, they will be well thought out. Not on the back of an envelope, not tens of billions of dollars just thrown away to create another media diversion, but they will be well thought out and catering for Australia's future and a positive future for Australia.
Before we go to a break, I want to just quickly touch on the other big issue of the last couple of days, the Stern-Hu verdict. The reaction, Jason, from China has been angry. At best, it says our government, should respect the outcome and stop making irresponsible remarks. This doesn't sound like the bilateral relations haven't been adversely affected, as the Foreign Minister suggested earlier in the week.
Well, we stand by our comments. I think Sophie would agree that it's best to have court proceedings occur in public. That's our view. We think it was a lost opportunity. There are always going to be challenges in a relationship with China where the two countries have different systems. Business will continue, diplomatic relations will continue, but we don't walk away from the comments that we made yesterday. We think this was a lost opportunity.
But what good did the rebuke do that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister made of the lack of transparency in the trial? What good does that do? It's a communist regime with its own legal system.
Well, I think it's an important point to make. We don't want any company involved in bribery. The first part of the hearing made clear that there was evidence to support that case, and by our officials being in the courtroom and hearing that evidence, you were able to see that case unfold. But the second half of the hearing was about commercial secrets. We weren't allowed in. Journalists weren't allowed in either. That makes it more difficult to understand the basis of that case.
Sophie, it doesn't appear, though, while difficult at the moment, the problems are causing any adverse impact on the trade relations. The iron ore price is set to soar, according to the recent reports on prices in Asia, and also the LNG deal done last week. Huge deal. So the trade relations remain unaffected, don't they?
Well, we've got an extraordinary trade growing with China, but that should not absolve the government of the day for standing up for Australians. We've seen, as Jason said, the second part of the case relating to commercial secrets where we weren't allowed in. Now, that is a breach of the consular agreement between China and Australia. If we had such a terrific political relationship with China, then at that time the Prime Minister should have picked up the phone and say, listen here, we've got an agreement, and that consular agreement requires our representatives to be present. So I think there was a little too late of a protest, too little too late. And having a successful economy and trade with other nations, including communist nations, does not mean that we absolve ourselves of responsibility and that we should be mute out of fear that there might be retaliation from a totalitarian regime.
Okay.
We need to be firm, particularly about the rights of our citizens and to enforce agreements we've made with other nations.
Just a quick response.
Well, look, I agree that we shouldn't be mute. The Foreign Minister spoke to the Ambassador here and his counterparts in China to make it clear that we believe that hearing should be in public. But look, I think it's a bit rich to hear this criticism from the Liberal Party. Remember, last year we were criticised for being too tough on China because we granted a visa to Rabia Kadir and the opposition were worried that we were going to upset China. Now apparently we're not being tough enough. You can't have it both ways, Sophie.
Well, there's a consular agreement in place, and why didn't Prime Minister Rudd pick up the phone and say we've got an agreement in place?
Well, OK, let's just pause there. Both had you say. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us.